Hi YouTube. Welcome to part 2 of my series on sex and the Watchtower publications. Last time, we made it to 1973. Okay, fair warning, this video is not safe for work. We discussed last time that Jehovah's Witnesses have a very unique blend of sexual repression and way too much information at the same time, and they hear this constantly both at their meetings and in their literature. They talk about sex way too much, but don't let that fool you, because they consider any premarital or extramarital sex and even certain types of married sex to be the absolute worst thing you could possibly do. For people born in this religion, this results in either extremely repressed individuals who are terrified of sex or the freakiest freaky dinks you've ever met. Okay, so today we start with a Watchtower article called Loyalty in the Time of the End, and this was in the Watchtower in 1973. In the modern practice of dating, many young couples engage in petting. That does whip up strong feelings of passion. Yet some may argue that this is not wrong as long as there is no actual joining of the sex organs. Ew. They make it sound like they're joining a gang or something. Oh my God, guys, there's gonna be a rumble. The Crips, the Bloods, and the sex organs. Since as they understand matters, this is what the Bible specifically forbids for unmarried persons. Such reasoning is both mistaken and dangerous. Blah, blah, blah. Members. Blah, blah, blah. Even if their passionate petting did not reach the point of fornication, Greek porneia, in the Bible sense of the word, it could still constitute uncleanness, Greek akatharsia, an indecent, impure kind of conduct. Uncleanness is listed following fornication in the Apostles' list of works of the fallen flesh, and he warns that those who unrepentantly practice such things will not inherit God's kingdom. What I want to know is, how are they so sure that the term uncleanness here refers to something sexual and not just to being nasty, as in not bathing? Or, as Jehovah's Witnesses might say, persons who engage in practices of poor hygiene. Not only this, but such unclean actions might steadily become more gross in nature or extent, kind of like this article, until they reach the point where they rightly are classified as fornication, porneia. This is because this word scripturally refers not just to sexual union between unmarried persons, but to all kinds of gross immorality or lewd conduct, such as one might find in places of prostitution. Oh, you mean the backseat of your Cadillac, brother? Are they talking about brothels? I mean, there aren't very many brothels around these days. Maybe in Nevada or Amsterdam or something, but we don't have a lot of brothels. So how do they know what actually goes on in a place of prostitution? Was that part of the research for this article? Inquiring minds want to know. So this next article was supposedly a first-hand account from a voodoo person. What do you call a person who practices voodoo? Voodoo-sant. Sexual immorality was rife among practicers of voodoo. My! I know that the spirits on occasion would demand that worshippers take off their clothes or bare their breasts and engage in sexual relations. I began to wonder whether the reason for this was in some way connected with the spirit's wish to gratify perverted desires. Blah, blah, blah. There was apparently a voodoo center. Blah, blah, blah. Remarkable powers. What, am I to believe that the Jehovah's Witnesses actually believe in voodoo? Really? However, in time, she discovered that she had become a helpless puppet of unseen forces. Mental illnesses are invisible. Under spirit command, she was forced to arrange for immoral women to entice her husband away from home, and he would commit adultery with them. But why? What's the point? This doesn't make any sense. Then the spirits demanded that sex relations form part of the healing rituals that she performed in her home. The explanation was that by this means the sick person would be unloaded or cured, his sickness being transferred by means of the sexual intercourse to the medium. The spirits also ordered that women patients be treated by performing acts of lesbianism with them. In the case of young people, the spirits encouraged sex control. In reality, masturbation. Okay, it sounds like to me that these two people had an open marriage by consent, and she was using "the spirits told me to" as an excuse to other people who asked why. Also, there was probably some pretty heavy mental illness involved on all sides. I'm just gonna go out on a limb with that. This is just salacious, gratuitous bullshit. This is like softcore porn for Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, I guess dwelling on sex is okay as long as you're clutching your pearls over how awful and depraved it is. It's ridiculous. Now, in 1976, the youth book came out. It's actually, the title of the book was Your Youth, Getting the Best Out of It. So this book came out in 1976. And I remember having to study this in the mid-1980s with an elder in his family because my father no longer lived at home with us. And it was really, really embarrassing as a young girl to have to read stuff like what you're about to hear out loud in front of a group of people, including an elder. Just, ugh. On page 27, we find this. Along with this change from childhood to womanhood, there is a broadening of your hips and your breasts begin to develop. Look, this might come as a shock to some of you, but some women don't actually ever grow birthing hips and big milking titties. I know plenty of women who have lithe builds and flat chests, and they are still just as much women as the curvier variety. But way to make teen girls feel inadequate, Watchtower. These many developments, some visible, some invisible, are all preparations for the dual role in life that mankind's creator has reserved for women, that of being a wife and a mother. The broader hips that girls develop not only aid in making childbirth easier, but also make it easier to carry small children. Stand barefooted in my own front yard with a baby on my hip. This is misogynist bullshit. The width of your hips does not assist you in childbirth, you idiots. The width of your pelvis might, and that might influence the width of your hips, but just having broad hips doesn't necessarily have any bearing on childbirth. Surprise, guys, some women actually have no desire to have children. But yes, ladies, that is your shining and only purpose in life. Dual purposes of being wives and mothers. Oh, you wanted to be a nuclear physicist? Too bad, bitch. Get back in the kitchen. Circuit overseer's coming for dinner. During pregnancy, the normal fatty deposits on the woman's body are a reserve supply that can be drawn on as she nourishes unborn or newly born children. And with birth, the breasts begin producing milk. Yeah, except when they don't. Nobody tells you what birth and breastfeeding is really like. They don't tell you that sometimes the baby is not the least bit interested in breastfeeding. Or maybe he is and he can't figure out how to do it. Or maybe he is and it hurts like infernal hell at first. Or sometimes your milk just doesn't come in. And sometimes it comes in like a fire hose and your poor infant needs a snorkeling mask. But I digress. You may have a certain wonderment and curiosity about your own rapidly changing body. How should you satisfy that curiosity? Should you experiment with your sex organs? Oh my God, they sound like they're aliens trying to pretend to be human. Let's experiment with our sex organs. Over here, we have a control group. And over here, is there anything wrong with rubbing them in some way until the excitement is climaxed? Oh my. Well, if we hadn't thought up a good experiment by now, Watchtower just gave us an idea. Honestly, it's articles like this that actually gave me the first glimmer of a notion about trying such a thing. Also, anyone who spent any time as a Jehovah's Witness knows the drill when they hear a question like this. The answer to any question that starts with, should we do XYZ, or is there anything wrong with this activity? The answer is always, no, we should not do that. And yes, there is something very wrong. It's evil and sinful and wrong, and you'll die at Armageddon. In fact, masturbation can lead into homosexuality. In such instances, the person not satisfied with his lonely sexual activity seeks a partner for mutual sex play. This happens much more frequently than you may realize. Contrary to what many persons think, homosexuals are not born that way, but their homosexual behavior is learned. And often, a person gets started when very young by playing with another's sexual parts and then engaging in homosexual acts. Okay, this is the biggest load of bullshit that I have ever heard, guys. Have any of you ever thought while jerking off, gee, I'd really like to try this with someone else's penis? I mean, unless you're actually already gay. Ladies, same goes for you. Have you ever been doing your thing and thought, gee, there really needs to be another vagina involved here? I mean, what I'm saying is, if you want to play with another set of sexual parts that are just like yours, then you're probably gay or bisexual already. Oh my God, where do they even come up with this stuff? This is just stupid. And y'all, it's not just going through puberty or shellacking your shillelagh every now and then that you have to carefully analyze and feel ashamed about. Because later on in this book, our next passage is about dancing, and they don't like that either. Is there good reason why you might have objection to certain of these dances? There is if the dance arouses you sexually. Oh my. And brings a temptation to commit sexual immorality. It could cause you many problems. How often do you find yourself in this situation? I feel so tempted to commit sexual immorality right now. Oh my. Ancient fertility dances, for example, were designed to incite sexual passions, and certain modern dances have been reminiscent of these. Oh my God. Seriously? Who cares? Who the hell cares? We are not doing ancient fertility dances. We are doing the electric slide and the Cupid shuffle. Many dances in recent years have been variants of the twist. The dancers do not touch, but the hips and shoulders may gyrate in sexually suggestive ways. This was written in 1976, y'all. 1976. Chubby Checker invited everyone to do the twist in 1960. That is 16 years before this was written. I mean, what does this mean? In another 10 years, they're going to be talking about twerking in the Watchtower? I don't. A young person's passions may be aroused by watching a body perform these gyrations. If I were watching a body perform sexually suggestive gyrations, I'd really be concerned, because this sounds like we're at Weekend at Bernie's or something. I mean, with the way they say watching a body perform these gyrations, it sounds like they're watching a dead body. I mean, why couldn't they just say a person or somebody? Because this just sounds gross. A girl, for example, may not think anything about it, simply being caught up in the movements of the dance. But she shouldn't ignore the effect on onlookers and on what they might think of her. Oh yeah, because we all know that females are responsible for the thoughts of others when they view our bodies, even when we don't want them viewing us and have not invited them to do so. But we should care deeply about what every rando in the viewing area thinks. Please. Even though you have no wrong motive, if you participate in such dances, you would be wise to consider the kind of attraction you may be to other young persons. For example, are they attracted to you on the basis of the sexual arousal they get from you? A type of arousal they get from persons who dress in tight clothing. Oh my. And gyrate their hips and make various erotic gestures. In other words, filthy sluts. Do you want to be a filthy slut? Do you? I am dying to know what kind of erotic gestures they're talking about. And of course, they've got to get into their rules on dating, because every part of your life must be policed after all. More often than not, Dating involves some physical contact, holding hands, kissing, or something beyond that. Oh, you're a good boy. Oh my goodness, you're a good boy. At first, just touching the other person's hand may be very pleasurable, causing one to feel a warm glow. You know, it's articles like this that made me get the skeevies every time somebody says the word pleasurable. I mean, saying that makes whatever we're talking about instantly unpleasant. But after a while, it may lose its thrill and may not have the same effect. Something more, such as kissing, may appeal. But then that too may become ordinary, even a little stale. Why is this? Because that's completely normal. The more you do anything, guys, the more you're used to it. That doesn't mean something's horribly wrong. Because where sexual passion is involved, it is all part of a chain of events designed to lead to a specific outcome. The first link is the first touch. The last link is sexual relations, which God's word shows is reserved for marriage mates. Everything in between can lead up to that last link in the chain. So then, if you are not married, is it wise to start with the first link or any of the others? That's right. No human contact whatsoever, because it all leads to sexual intercourse. All of it. With advice like this, is it any wonder why there are severe sexual problems within the organization? If a person's been taught their whole lives that any touch is an invitation to sex, ew, that's kind of a problem. To do so is likely to bring vexation. Why? Because your body is going to get itself ready for something it should not receive now, that last link. Why would Jehovah do something like this? If he hates passion and sex before marriage so much, why didn't he just make humans only have capacity and desire for sex once they're married? Because he should have been able to do that if that's actually what his intent was. But no. Instead, we get this bullshit. And you know why? Because Jehovah does not exist and marriage is a human construct. Now, I like being married. Marriage is generally good. It's a great thing for me. But you know what? It's not some kind of moral imperative, y'all. Stimulating the desire for sexual relations, but not fulfilling this desire, may lead to frustration and nervous tension. Fornication will not end the vexation. Actually, it can, if you're doing it right. Rather, it can lead to calamity. How? Well, if you assume that someone wants to have sex with you just because they tapped you on the shoulder to ask you to move out of the aisle at the grocery store, I can see how calamity might result. But in the real world, human beings actually need touch. They need closeness and human contact, both sexual and non-sexual. Teaching people to avoid and reject that is harmful in a number of ways. It can result in venereal disease. The girl could become pregnant, and this could pressure a couple into marriage they are really not prepared for, adversely affecting their future happiness. Or the young man may refuse to marry the young woman, and she is then obliged to bring up the child herself with no husband. Or she may be tempted to undergo an abortion, which the Bible shows to be a form of murder. Or the two people could have a rollicking good time for a little bit and nobody could be the worse for it. In fact, everybody involved would probably be a bit happier if it weren't for all this guilt and shaming. Is this not calamity? No. Trust me, there are worse things. You may be determined that dating will not have these consequences for you, but many who were just as determined as you are have wound up facing these troubles. Really, then, the question comes back to whether you are ready for marriage or not. Come on, guys, there are worlds of nuance between these extremes. If you can make mature decisions about sex, like using protection and talking about it beforehand to ensure that all participants are on board, then you can do a lot to ward off these calamities they're talking about. I mean, sure, these things are in the realm of possibility, but it's not like there aren't easy ways to prevent every single one of them and still enjoy the experience. And how can you call yourself ready for marriage if you have no knowledge or experience in the bedroom and are so repressed that you can't even talk about it like an adult? Holding hands can be a clean expression of affection between persons contemplating marriage. True, it does have a stimulating effect, but this is natural and not necessarily bad. Wait a minute. If every single touch is a link in the chain that leads to humping each other like rabbits or something, how is it that holding hands is natural and not bad, but not kissing or other activities? Why, just the sight of the person one is considering marrying may also stimulate, making the heart beat faster. I really hate the word stimulate. Nevertheless, we need to remember that human nature being what it is, physical contact does increase the pull of sexual attraction. So because of realizing the possible consequences to which it might lead, some persons may prefer to limit themselves very strictly as to physical contact during courtship, and no one should disparage or make light of their conscientious position. So tell me this, how would you feel about dating someone who is such a goody two-shoes that they won't even kiss or hug you before marriage? How would you be able to trust that they aren't completely asexual and that you'd even be able to consummate the marriage at all? You'd be almost certain to have a very short and lackluster wedding night experience at least. But if they'd really been holding back that whole time, they'd probably embarrass themselves when it came time to kiss the bride at the ceremony, never mind getting to a hotel room. Personally, if I were dating someone and they refused to touch me at all or even tried to shame me about it, I'd be pretty reluctant to continue that relationship. I need love and I am not ashamed. Kissing may also be a clean expression of affection between persons contemplating marriage, or it may not be. Really, the question is, to what extent does passion enter the picture? Kissing can be done in a way that stirs passion to the point that a couple are deeply aroused sexually. Sexual arousal prepares the couple for intercourse, but this privilege, according to God's law, is reserved for married persons. If a couple knowingly flaunt God's law by deliberately and brazenly engaging in passion-arousing conduct, whether by caressing each other's sexual organs or otherwise, they are guilty of uncleanness and loose conduct. Yeah, this couple is only getting it on because they want to flaunt God's law. They're like, yeah, I'ma touch the wiener. What you gonna do about it? Please. And can you picture this actually happening? You've got a Jehovah's Witness couple sitting bolt upright on the edge of the couch, and one turns to the other and says, I feel like brazenly engaging in passion-arousing conduct. Perhaps you could caress my sexual organs? Once the physical desires begin to stir, it is generally very difficult to stop their buildup. Look, you might not want to stop, but you can stop. It might not be fun to stop, but it is, in fact, entirely doable. But you know what? Reading dumb shit like this in the Watchtower publications led parents like my mother to tell their children truly ludicrous things. So here's an example. When I was a kid, my sister really wanted to go to the mall with some friends just to have a little independence and walk around and feel big. Typical early teen stuff. Harmless, right? Wrong. My mom said, well, there might be boys there at the mall, and so my sister could not go under any circumstances. And my sister, being who she is, said, well, why should that matter? I mean, nobody's going to just throw down in the middle of the mall. It's a public place. And Mom actually told her that if she met a boy at the mall and she liked him, she would have no choice. I quote, sometimes you just have to lay down and spread your legs. This kind of conditioning makes it very difficult for Jehovah's Witnesses to behave like normal, responsible adults on any level in sexual situations. Those who let passion build up in them to the point of desiring sexual relations, when they are not entitled to those through marriage, subject themselves to tension and frustration. So let me get this straight. If you ever feel like you want to have sex, you're asking for it? It is like reading an exciting book only to find that the last chapter has been torn out. Okay, guys, if your sexual experience is anything like reading a book, you're doing it wrong. And I love books. I do. I am an avid reader, but there is absolutely no comparison between having sex and reading a good book. And you know what? If I'm reading a book and I find that the last chapter has been torn out, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the bookstore and get me another copy. And I'm going to get on with what I was doing. Tune in next time as we go to part 3 of the Sex in the Watchtower series. Until then, I'm Sister Fister, and this is crazy.